Try that again. Good evening. Welcome to the High Speed Internet Subcommittee being conducted in a hybrid fashion from Southwick Town Hall on Thursday, June 9th, 2022. In attendance, we have myself, Doug Moglen, Christopher Boyd, Marlene Quinlan, Bob Boyd, Jason, I'm going to mess up your name. Why don't you say it again for me again?
Jason Trevor.
I'll mess it up again. We'll just go with that. I've been doing it. I'll never get it right, Jason. It's like a mental thing with me. It's okay. And so far, this meeting is being recorded. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please make it known to the chair. First thing on the agenda is public comments. Does anyone have any public comments? Seeing that everyone here is on the board, plus our guest, I'm going to say no. But if there's anyone on Zoom that has a comment, let me know. Great, staying right on schedule. From what I recall, I just want to go over a couple of quick things, then we'll get to our guests. From what I recall, when we last met, which was just about a year ago or so, from previous members on the board to new members on the board, so Bob and Jason, is this your first time serving on a board or commission in the town of Southwick?
No, Southwick, yes.
Jason? Great, that's great to hear. Because this board was unique in that, and it's the only board I've ever been associated with, that every single person except for the select board designee was new to being on a board or commission in town. So I think that was great. So just a couple of ground rules. You've been to enough meetings, sat through enough meetings, and we bored you to tears a few times already, but we are subject to the open meeting law in the Commonwealth of Mass. There are a couple of meetings, so all of our meetings are done in public and in person or hybrid like this. We're going to have minutes that we'll vote on at our next meeting. And we follow a kind of basic Rob's Rule of Order very, very loosely, right? Motion, second, that kind of stuff. And then any votes that we take as a commission or as a subcommittee, sorry, have to be roll call. That's part of the open meeting law when you're conducting a meeting via hybrid or remote. Well, the first thing I want to do, it's kind of a formality, but because I don't know how it didn't get recorded properly, is I think this board can do it and send it back to the Board of Selectmen and send it to the town clerk, is to accept the resignation of Alicia Sullivan. Because she did resign from the board when I asked her if she wanted to be reappointed early last year, and she said no, she's very busy with her job and has a new child at home. Congratulations to her. And I know I mentioned it in a selectmen's meeting, but she's still showing on this list. So I just want to, if someone wants to make a motion to accept her resignation.
I'll make a motion to accept her resignation.
Okay, motion by Chris Boyd. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Quinlan.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a roll call vote. Doug Moglen, aye.
Chris Boyd, aye.
Marlene Quinlan.
Aye.
Aye.
And Bob.
Robert Boyd, aye.
Great. All right, so that's done. I think you want to hold reorganization of board till we have a fuller commission. It's up to you. Any objection to that? I'll just conduct this meeting since we have a guest here tonight, and we'll work through that. And do we?
I think you have to take the votes from the people on that too.
Oh, I forgot Jason because I clicked away from him. Jason, sorry. Can you vote on that motion?
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. It's been a while since I've chaired a meeting. I was the clerk for a year or so here. Okay. I was going to spend some time to review some of the stuff that we had from last, especially for our new members. I'll do that I think after our guests, to be respectful of their time, I just want to bring up a couple of points. We did conduct a fairly extensive study and survey in town. I think you guys had seen the data. I know I shared it with Whip City. I know you were involved in it. You were involved in it, but for yourself and Jason, we had 200 plus responses to that survey. To a person, everybody wants to have an option for high speed and higher speed access to the internet. The question is the how. So I've been talking to Mr. Sullivan over the last almost year and a half or so, trying to figure out any way forward. This board had come back and reported back to the selectmen, and we didn't quite see a way forward monetarily, frankly. So, but input from the public is they still want to see it. They still want to figure out a way forward. So we're going to take another run at it and see where we can do this. So with that, if you gentlemen want to come up, and absolutely. And you don't have this electronically by any chance, do you, so I can share this with, you put it on the screen? Okay,
Sorry,
that's all right.
I can get it though. I'll follow up. I can get it. I'll send it
I
to you.
could
so-
legit just drive out there. If you want it. Taking me all of like 3 minutes to be there.
Hang on a second, Jason, let me switch that. He's horrible at work. Yeah, absolutely. That should put Jason back on the hour. See how it works. You can still hear us okay, Jason, right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Sounds a little better. Okay.
So my name is Brian Sullivan. I'm the key account sales manager, Westfield Gas and Electric with City Fiber. And I'm here with the general manager, Tom Flaherty, and I want to get his title right, Telecom Superintendent, Chris Lavertu. So as Doug said, we engaged a year or so ago, in regards to talking about high-speed internet into Southwick and how you go in the process. I was going to say we're starting here today, but you've done an awful lot of historical data collecting and obviously surveys and things like that that already says that the town is interested in looking at it and wanting it in theory. What we'd like to do today is go through, it's a brief agenda. It looks like a lot on paper, but it's something we've done with other towns that we're managing, and it seems to work because it chronologically will let you know a process that we've gone through in order to partner with the town of Southwick and be your partner throughout the whole thing and get you from the beginning to counting poles in the streets and right up through to turning residents and business onto high-speed internet service. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris to do part one, and we'll each take it. But if you have questions as we go along, it's really good. Just jump in and ask them. At the end, I do have a kind of a top 10, eight most asked questions that we've run into over time that will have some answers for you that are probably going on in your head. But we'll, baby steps as we go. And it's nice to see you re-engaged. I know it's been a long time since you had these conversations, kind of dispersed in for a while and stuff, but to bring it back. And if you have been reading the news and stuff in the Commonwealth, an awful lot of towns are going through this exact same process. We've assisted a lot of those, especially our neighbors in the hill towns. And when you talk about finances, it's another piece that we bring to the table in regards to helping you find, state funded grants and things like that may be available that you don't even know about. I know you probably know about ARPA funds and things like that, which can be used, but there's other sources. We just went through the Commonwealth has granted, it's pushing $2 million, I believe, to an awful lot of towns, strictly for broadband infrastructure build out or expansion. And so, like I said, a lot of your neighbors are already taking advantage of that money. So
That wasn't the community compact deal, was it?
it is the community compact.
So that's not just for municipal building interconnection?
Well, there's a, I think it's a gray area.
I read it 6 times and I didn't answer it myself. So
Yeah.
okay.
So that's how it's written. That's how the grant is written. But if you look at we call it the northern cluster, but it's some of the towns up north in the hill towns. They're using it as a redundancy program that they built out their networks now, but they need the backup and things like that. And they went 5 towns together and applied for it and got $440,000 to do that. Hamden, who we're working with, also just asked me that question today about the municipal buildings, but their municipal buildings are all throughout their town. So if you think about it, putting all your municipal buildings on, you got to get the poles to the buildings, and you've really covered the whole town. So I don't want to speak for the Commonwealth in that, but it's being used for different reasons in different towns, but anything to do with broadband. Everything has to focus on the broadband.
Exactly.
And,
Okay,
and
great.
infrastructure.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Nope, that's perfect. Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, yeah. As Brian introduced, I'm Chris Lavirtue, Telecom Superintendent for Wood City Fiber. I've been part of this project since day one with our Westfield deployment and moving into the hill towns and our other partnerships. So there's kind of the way it's written on here is kind of the outline of the process. It's really high level, 10,000 foot look, because there's a lot of minutia that goes on behind the scenes on this. But there is this whole design and engineering functionality that has to occur. So you start off with the pole applications and make ready. We went through this with the hill towns. You have to apply for the poles. You have to become an attachee on the pole. Once you apply for the poles, obviously these poles have been in the ground for many, many years. There's not always space available for your municipal plant. But we will research if you have any access use rights for, say, fire alarms, various other things. And we'll work with the utilities. You have Eversource and Verizon in town. And now we also realize that we have to work with Comcast or Charter if they're in town as well through these pole application processes. And the pole application process is really it can be a little bit of a lengthy process, but it can also be beneficial to you if, say, the infrastructure has been in place for a long time. It really pushes the need for the utilities to look at their infrastructure, and also benefits the town as a whole, you know, from reliability with regards to your electrical infrastructure. And so that process will begin if you so choose. We will survey the town. We'll get all the information on the poles. And then what we'll do is we'll act as your liaison on your behalf to then apply for those poles, gathering the necessary data, and then working with the utilities to work through the make ready, because obviously a lot of this infrastructure has been in place for a while. So a lot of it can't be put on the burden of the town to replace. So that's kind of the step one of the whole process. From there, we'll look at doing design. We call it procurement, but it's design of your town, going into all the infrastructure of the town, looking at what needs to be done overhead, underground. I know you have 85 miles of roadways, you have 16 miles of underground, so there's quite a bit of a terrain to cover with regards to Southwick. And then with the procurement process, it's going to be utilized. We use a PVC or a design firm that we will utilize on your behalf to then design the plant. And then we'll work with them to refine it, and work with you to refine how you'd want to see your design roll out, essentially. And then from there, there's the construction and project management phase that kind of stands kind of by itself. You know, obviously, if we get to that stage, you will have, you know, a construction company that's going to do most of the constructing and designing or in installation. And then from there, you get to your fulfillment, which is adding services to your system and lighting up your customers. Now, we've done it a couple of different ways. Obviously, with the hill towns, they were small enough to where, you know, they really, you design the whole town. With regards to Southwick, you guys are a little bit more robust. So we could take a more phased approach to design the town, very focused on where you see the biggest impact of, you know, combining the municipal plant, which I know we're working with your police department currently for the regional dispatch. So this would just go hand in hand with trying to provide you the municipal ring for your infrastructure and your schools and everything of that nature. So, all right. Any questions regarding the process or any step in the process? This is really, like I said, 10,000 foot level. We could get into more of the minutia once we really engage into this process.
One thing I'll mention that Chris, is the agreements to do this would be between the town of Southwick and the Westfield Gas and Electric, Wood City Fiber, intergovernmental agreement between ourselves. And within the work that we do, we'd be having to have subcontractors and things like that. We do all of that, bidding, RFPs and everything on behalf of you. So we understand all the municipal law and everything that you have to go through in order to get 3 quotes or send out for RFP and, all that stuff. But we would be doing that on your behalf, obviously with your input with who, if you didn't want somebody, but, bidding process.
Has
But
the,
we do that for you.
has the town of Southwick had any votes to become a municipal light plant?
Yeah.
That's part of the process?
Absolutely, and it's not a short part of the process. I mean, you can do it simultaneously with some of the other work, but we did have an attorney come in the previous, one of our earlier meetings, and I believe we have to go to 2 successive town meetings.
In
Consecutive
consecutive
years.
calendar years.
Yeah, so, and I have to go back and check my notes to see if you could have a special in November and then the annual in May, or it has to be May.
No,
Like,
it
It can go special meeting in November, you post your agenda, you go through the process, and then you can go in May as well.
Great.
So
One
it's
of the
a
hill
vote of
towns.
the select board first.
Yep.
And then vote of town meeting, So it's an easier process when we're doing it with West Springfield. It's a longer process there because they have to go on a full vote of the town because of the way their charter is set.
And just as an FYI, as we have looked at the ARPA piece, right? So we have 2 tranches of ARPA money. One's received and pretty well spent. The second one is coming, and we're going to talk about it in upcoming meetings. In Southwick, the Board of Selectmen, Select Board does the allocations of the ARPA funding. So we did allocate $15,000 out of our first ARPA tranche to high-speed internet. Mostly it's probably going to be legal expense and whatnot if we're able to proceed for work towards the MLP designation, right, to be able to get that done. So rather than, that was an easy decision to do, just to allocate those funds now for that. And then given the timeline of where we are in this whole thing, it made no sense to allocate any additional monies out of the first ARPA tranche. There was shovel-ready work that could be done now with that money as it was intended. So we're gonna look at that second tranche and see, based on discussions here and then back with the select board, where we go. This board's gonna have to start, this sub is gonna have to start moving, I think, rather quickly in order to, based on the timelines of some of this stuff is gonna take a while to do. So that less paperwork, and, you mentioned that, it's been a while since we met, and we had some issues on the select board and with appointment processes and so on and so forth. So once we had that kind of ironed out and had a way forward, first board we put back together was this one. And so that's why, the timing of this is now, even though it's not great, heading into summer and everything else, but I think this is going to be important for us to further this discussion as we move along.
Yeah, so the board knows, so the town or, through the municipal light plant will own all the infrastructure here in Southwick. So it's a town product. It's not Westfield Gas and Electric. It's not Whip City Fiber. What Whip City Fiber and Westfield Gas and Electric do, we provide all the service, customer service, technical customer service. We do all the project oversight, everything like that, and all the way to internet service provider. So then we go into a longer term contract as far as the internet service provider. So there's no heavy lifting at all from the town, other than going through the process of, with bonding or anything like that. And we go through that full process with you. So we lay out everything so you know what the costs are, how many customers you need to have to pay off your debt service. And it's really, once that happens, I don't want, say it's an easy process, but it is really an easy process to go through.
Not an easy process, but it's an easy process.
Yeah, it's,
Cards on the table, I think, where the Board of Selectmen drew the line was I guess we probably need to refine these numbers and take a look at them, but the spitball number was $8 million. It was $8 million, soup to nuts, to turn the switch on the entire town. And then, so we got a bond for $8 million. Where are we gonna get $8 million? And so then the $8 million question is, if we take a 10-year bond for 8 million, will the revenue from that in the course of 10 years cover the 8 million and retire the bond? And will this technology last the 10 years of the bond, such that if the whole thing, 15 years, this is all obsolete and we're all on wireless or flying cars or whatever, the town's not on the hook for anything, for any of this bond money. It doesn't fall back on the tax rate or the tax base.
One of
That
the
was the
quick
key
answers, one of the quick answers to that, so we build a 1 gigabit system, that's the base system, that can then be amplified to a 10 gigabit system over time. So that foundation that you start with the 1 gigabit, and then that growth is there to give that to you over time. So that's a key foundation. Just to go along with, the only thing that we would own is the router in the home, so that when there is tech customer service needed, we ask the homeowner or business owner, can we have access to your device? They say yes, and then we can do some internal testing before we have to physically send somebody out there. So that's the only thing that Westfield or Westfield Gas and Electric owns that's in the town of Southwood.
Yep.
So then that's,
We're keen on that. I mean,
Yeah.
we can hardly get email and run a hybrid meeting, let alone operate a broadband internet network in the town of
well, you
South.
taught us something
Not gonna
today,
lie,
so
right?
with the owl here.
So, Mr. Chair, if I can answer some of what you just asked about the financial piece, we'll be able to put that together for you, so you have that in front of you. You're gonna get a take rate number, and what that is how many Southwood people would have to take the service in order for you to be making those bond payments every year, so that it's not affecting anything else, and we'll map all that out for you. We start with literally giving you the number of polls and things like that, and take it right through to the financial end. So you'll have all that information in front of you, and it will probably be some updating from what you did the
Sure.
last time. Obviously, numbers have changed. But what our goal is, or I believe the town's goal is, that you're building this network that Southwood people are gonna own. It's your municipal network, and that it's going to be paying for itself as you go along and as you expand. So that's why when Chris said, we'll build it based on your heavy trafficked area first, you're gonna wanna see your neighborhoods that, your 200 people that said they want it, make sure those 200 people actually get on it and do it.
Yep.
And use it and build it outward that way, so that financially you're paying your bills as you go along. $8 million is a big number. What we're gonna try to show you is how you're gonna be able to finance that over the life of the bond.
And we kneecapped ourselves a little bit with that in the beginning, and I don't disagree with it, but from the select board, for those that were on when we first started, it was a requirement that we have to do the whole town. So there's no option of cherry picking of like, we're gonna come down College Highway, we're gonna do Fernwood and Birchwood because the houses are 25 feet apart, and that's low hang, and it's right on poles, and they're all new, and we're gonna do those, and that's cheap, and we're gonna get in there and get done. We realize that there's, especially west end of town and whatnot, that there's longer distances and tougher terrain and some other stuff. But I guess historically, this was the way they did it with way back for Continental Cable when they first came in the 70s, I guess, right? And it turned out to be a very prudent decision because it's the enabler for what became
we're doing now.
Comcast to drop high-speed internet to the entire town as we have it now. So it is kind of it would be, there's no doubt this will be a phased project, and
Sure.
you're right. But, and we did offer, and I guess, our original thought was, could we find an operator that's willing to own and operate the whole thing? So to us, that's a two-tailed approach is, well, it takes all the risk away, right? If Westfield G&E wants to come in and own it, finance it, collect all the money from it, we'll do the MLP part. We know we need to do that for the pole access, right? But essentially have somebody come and be the owner, operator, and maintainer of that whole system, and also take out the loan and collect the rents and pay down the debt, kind of take the risk, right? That doesn't seem to be an appetite that Westfield G&E has.
It's not an appetite for us because we can't physically own infrastructure outside
And
of Westfield
correct.
unless we create another co-op like we did for the pipeline coming off of the
Correct.
Tennessee Gas Pipeline.
And we did talk, but frankly, we've talked to 2 or 3 other high-speed guys, and there's no appetite for that either, right? They didn't want to do it either. It's very capital intensive. the Southwick density isn't in their target. West Hartford, for example, meets their density target, right? And even parts of Granby and Suffield get close to their density target, but they're not coming over the border anytime soon.
Just so you know how Westfield built that, we started with a test area first, which I don't know if you know Westfield,
Yep.
Devon Manor over by East Mountain Road in that area, which met some low income area, some commercial area, and some upper middle class residential area. So that was our first area to test our take rates and things like that. This was also in what, 2013, 2014, when we started that process. There wasn't the streaming that there is today, and the interest level, you know, we had to sell it at that point. Now, as we've developed, we took a bond out. It was $15 million, and we felt at that point, I was on the commission at that time. We took a risk, took the bond out, and we felt with the $15 million that we could build out 70% of Westfield. So we actually did target marketing at that point across the city and said, if you respond, you have to meet a certain level, and then you're on the, you know, if you meet that level, you're going to be one of the areas that are built. So if you came out to that 100, we started first with 100% feedback areas, which wasn't 100% of each, what they call a fiber service area or section of town. But it was about 50% of each of those areas, which is how we could get that payback to meet that $15 million note. And those are the things that we'll break down with you. So what Brian and Chris were saying is, you build those areas first that you're going to get the most bang for your buck. Once those are lit up, you're going to have revenue coming in to help you pay for that and to further your expansion. So we only took a bond out for 15 million. We did an internal loan for $2 or $3 million just from ourselves. And in the end, right now we're paying cash for our further expansion. We're hoping by the end of 2024 construction season, maybe into 25, that we're going to be at 90% or 99% passings, which means 99% of Westville will be available, or will have Whip City Fiber available to them. What we needed to meet our number was more like 29 to 30%. So we're making money. So we have, we have additional revenue, additional net income to our business because we're a true MLP, where we're an electric company, a natural gas company, and then a telecom company. But then we do provide other additional value to the city in a pretty substantial tax payment, plus our contributions to other, community activities. And that's one of the keys, that once you get into some non-tax revenue for the community, that you can also reinvest, one, in your plant, but two, in additional investment into the town.
Understood. Questions so far?
I know
Jason?
you have one.
Well, this would be done in phases, obviously. As you're building the network, can you bring people online? Or
Yes.
do you have to, say you're coming down College Highway and you run a mile of fiber optic line, can you start putting those houses online?
No, unfortunately not.
No?
There's a bit of a process with the whole construction phase. You'll be able to bring the cable down the street, but then you have to splice it, then you have to test it, and then you can bring customers online. But you also have to do it in a phased approach based on your optics and your electronics. Your electronics are going to dictate where they're located, where the customers are, and you don't want to piecemeal the process. You've got to do the cabling first, then you got to do the distribution levels infrastructure for second, then you're doing the splicing, and then you're finally at the point where you can light up customers. But that's where the fiber service areas are condensed to 250 customers. So you're really targeting a small area at times. I know Southwick has 37 passings per mile, so certain areas are going to be rural, like Doug said. They're going to be, it's going to be a long haul to get to those customers. But some of those impact areas are going to be, you're going to hit partial rural, partial density, and that fiber service area is going to have a mix of both, where you can construct it in probably a 3 to 4 month period. And within 3 to 4 months, you've got customers coming online from start to finish. So if the train was rolling and you had.
From day one,
Yep.
you could start seeing revenue coming in within 3 to 4 months.
Yep. So, and it really lends itself well, as long as you got the construction train rolling, And you're hitting fiber service area after fiber service area, because they're different skill sets. You've got the gentlemen that do what they call spine, or the strand up on the pole, then you got the gentlemen that do the cabling, and then you got the splicers. And once you get to that splicing and testing phase, that's really where you see the light at the end of the tunnel. And you can really kind of pinpoint, okay, we got like 3 weeks of splicing and testing. Those customers are coming online in week 4. So,
But when that first neighborhood is built and spliced and ready to go, they can start getting online as you're starting to build out the
Mhm.
second one and doing the same thing over. So I think what you're asking is, can we start rolling customers in as we're building out the
Right,
town?
right, right.
The answer is yes. Just, you gotta wait for it until you're ready to go. That's all.
But we'll be able to provide that whole plan, we'll provide a website, so people can click on their FSA or we'll break the town out into puzzle, like almost puzzle pieces. And you'll see the density versus, if you look at Wyben and Westfield, so the northwest corner, that fiber service area is this big, but then you look at some of the downtown sections and it's, half inch by half inch because of that density and multifamily houses and things like that. But we can break that out. We can do some testing and additional survey work if you'd like. The sign up, people can just click on it. They'll know how many people have signed up in their area. So then you can get, we call them neighborhood champions in Westfield, where they go out door to door saying, hey, we're here if you want high-speed internet, and they help market the product for you.
Absolutely.
So,
And I think one of the, just for the new guys, one of the interesting things to me in looking at this case study from Whip City was the take rate right out of the box, even of Comcast subscribers, right? Because that, from the data we show, everybody's got Comcast.
Yep.
And they have Comcast internet. That was a concern of Westfield G&E.
Right.
If we build this, and will they come? Will they come over? But the take rate even from Comcast customers was quite high. And obviously the retention's been great. I hadn't seen the retention numbers of late, but they were still very, 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 very good.
They're very strong.
I use this analogy all the time. Westfield, we're our own. Everyone knew who Westfield Gas and Electric was within Westfield. So there was a trust factor. There was, we're going to own this. We're not happy with Comcast. Let's go. The Hilltowns, on the other hand, is an area that they didn't have anything. They had no internet. They were using dial-up and DSL. So that was easy because high-speed internet was night and day for them. As a matter of fact, the economic spin-off and things like that has worked up there has been huge. And now we're moving into West Springfield, who's kind of a hybrid for us. They know Westfield Gas and Electric. They see what we've done out there. They do have, Comcast and the competitions, but the percentage of people that are just kind of tired of Comcast and some of the competition, and now the knowledge of, hey, the town can own this and it can actually be a profitable thing down the road, was the sale job there for people to get on. So we've seen a little bit of it, and Southwick falls in the middle of all of
I think
those.
I was gonna say,
You're
we're
right
right
in the
in the middle. We know you, we know it.
Yep.
And the survey data, which after this presentation I'll share again, bears out exactly what you said. No one's really crazy dissatisfied with Comcast from our survey data. And in all fairness, now that we're a pandemic past, a global pandemic past our survey, they did a phenomenal job considering that their usage model must have been turned completely on its head, right? Where the bandwidth is going and coming from, in the time of a pandemic versus normal. The issue isn't that. The issue is the cost, right? And the performance. We're not seeing, they call their gig speed,
I'm on their gigs.
and it's, and the customer service is generally lousy. But when it works, it is very consistent. It does work.
And it's not cheap.
Huh?
And it's not.
No, it's
cheap.
not at all cheap. It's very expensive. And that was the gripe we got. So, and the fact is that it's a de facto monopoly in Southwick. Technically, it's not, right? Because we can have someone come in. The fact is just no one else has come in. So now I think we're doing our residents a service here by potentially offering that, and it's going to drive competition. But the piece of data that I wanted to get back to was when you built it, your take rate as you went by people was inordinately high. It was fantastic, actually.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It was.
So,
And it's enabling us to continue that expansion without having to take out loans
correct.
and pay for it as we go. The hill towns, don't get me wrong, were substantial in helping us out. Currently, Westfield Gas and Electric, so Whip City Fiber is serving 14,200 customers. On January 1st of 2021, we were just under 8,000 customers. So we added, over 6,000 in the past year. So we've managed the installation of all those customers. Now, when we look at West Springfield, for example, they have potential for 13,000 customers. Our financials there, for them to meet their bond number, they have to get to 3,000 customers. And for them, it was a no-brainer. They're also, it's tighter, it doesn't have as much rural, they still do have some. But for them, it was a lot easier decision to go forward and to move forward. So their last piece for the MLP is this November election, and that's it. But the town has so far overwhelmingly, we have areas in Westfield that we're not, or West Springfield that we're not even considering touching right now, that are trying to sign up and show interest and just like, hey, when are you coming? When are you coming? One of the upsides there is that's where I grew up. My family's very involved in West Springfield. So when people see me around West Springfield, they're like, hey, when are you coming? When are you coming? But it's also a process, the poll application process. So there's many municipalities now looking and trying to advance through municipal broadband. We applied last August, September for West Springfield. We're just about to hear back from them. So it's a methodical process. You have to be extremely patient. But once that comes through, then they'll make poll changes. They'll make that's one of the key areas for the hill towns. There was 20 towns that we helped in the hill towns. There was almost $20 million of make ready costs in total that the state was helping with. But we had retirees that came back and worked for us as project managers. They went through and they're like, that pole's 80 years old. It hasn't been touched. We're not paying the $1,000 for that pole. They have to replace the pole. So when we advocated for them on their behalf, we reduced that cost by 10%, which, for these towns was, and for the state was significant.
Sure.
But that was one of the additional values that we provided.
To pull back to the agenda a little bit, some of the things that I want to make sure you people understand is that we're here to do all the things you might be thinking of. And Tom just touched on it, but things like repairs, dispatch, customer service, billing, all of that resides with us. It's all yours, but we're your chokehold away to be fixing. And we get calls obviously every day for hill towns and our customers now. Our internet's down, it's slow. We want to move it. We want to change it. We want to add the barn that's in the back, whatever, that's everything we do. But that's what we have in Whip City Fiber. We have those divisions already set up to be able to do that for you. So when Tom says there's no heavy lifting, that's really what he means is you people get to own it and run it, and we'll do the work part of it, build it, and then be the service provider. So that piece is really important when it comes. We already have the billing system in place. We just add your town to that billing system, and you would set up, the customer pays. They don't pay Whip City Fiber. The resident would pay the town of Southwick, the MLP, or however you set that up. That money doesn't come to us. It goes to you. So
I think
there's a long process in setting that up too.
What's that, Jason?
he said that's a good selling point too. That's like one of the biggest reasons, even though I'm with Comcast, I'm paying $140 a month for internet right now. I'd be happy to make the switch just in the fact that I would feel I was benefiting my town using the services as opposed to benefiting a multi-million-dollar company that isn't even in this town. They're not even in the area. Where's Comcast? They're like in Tennessee or something. Right, Frank?
The headquarters, yeah.
Yeah. So
The bill tells you where it's going, and
Yeah,
it's
right.
not anywhere. It's not down the road.
Here.
It's not here.
Yeah, and people I've talked to in the past about this, have literally turned around and said that they'd love to make a payment to the town, for their municipal services and actually see their money go to something, you know, within the town, and that would be a good way to push that too.
Agreed. That's one of the benefits that people have found out, that once they know it's, so we're paying for our service, but we're paying ourselves.
Right.
There's a pretty good story to go along with that, as opposed to, oh, we're paying Comcast again and the bill just went up another $5 and we don't even know what that is for. So, but that's the easy part to notice. It's the building it and figuring out what that take rate is and your return on investment is.
Agreed.
That's where we'll win.
And we didn't even, and Jason, one thing we didn't talk about, and I don't even know if it warrants discussion, it's much further down the road thing, but one thing that Westfield must have experienced a little bit, and we probably offset it somehow, is on the PEG stuff. So today, part of your Comcast bill, you'll notice there's a sneaky little line in there, right, that actually does go to the town. And they use that money to, well, it supports hybrid meetings and buys owls, but it also supports the Channel 15 and the local programming and supports the local, all the broadcast equipment and stuff that we have to support that Channel 15. That's mostly funded with money. It's not Comcast money, it's your money.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that.
It's a line on your
additional
bill,
tax,
just like
yeah.
it, you know, but it's based on your bill, it's a percentage. And then but it does get reverted back to the town into the PEG fund. So you're gonna have to, the town has to look at that to offset that loss of revenue as the take rate is gonna be great, it's gonna impact the PEG money coming in. It's not a huge amount of dollars. I think it's probably $30,000-ish a year in the grand scheme of things. I don't know what we're in the middle of negotiating a new contract with Comcast.
We
now.
did the same thing in Westfield. And it's a noticeable reduction, except for the fact that when you look at the other side of it and what the gas and electric or Wood City Fiber was doing for the city.
Right.
It was not even, it was like, okay, we can afford to do this based on we're gonna lose some PEG money, but we're gaining a lot more, potentially a lot more, if we're owning it ourselves. So you're right on.
One of the counselors at the time brought that up, one of the city councilors, when we were going for the bond. And it was funny because he was in one of the test market areas and ecstatic. I'm saving, $200+ a month. The internet is phenomenal. I work in IT. This is the greatest thing ever. But what happens when we lose this PEG money or whatever, right? And I said to him, you just said that you're saving $200+ a month. Would you want us to add the $2 or $3 or $10 a month to your bill? And the answer was heck no. I don't want to pay it. But he was concerned about I said, well, we're already paying it. So it's like that catch-22. But you can always look at it as part of when you're looking at your financing, what the impact, if negative, is going to be to the town where you have that $30,000. It is specific on what you have to spend the money on or what you can't spend the money on with technology. But you can look at those pieces to say, all right, we're going to be impacted $10,000. Will we have that $10,000 at the end of the year to give as a lieu of tax payment to the town, that the town can do whatever they want with it, versus just spending it, on whatever requirement they have. Or if it's continues to be more successful, you can work on other projects and have it earmarked for specific pieces in town that you really wanted to go on that's not inside your budget. So you have that opportunity from the municipal light plant side. But you can look through that as we go through the steps and the finances and things like that and what the costs are to build out. That's the upside. You can just say, well, we have to slow down, or you know what, this makes a lot of sense. For Westfield, we did a 20-year bond. It's up to you whether you want to do a 20. Any of the financing for the towns or cities that we've talked to, we've always talked about a 20-year payment. It's up to you if you want to do a 10. It doesn't totally double the cost, but it does certainly increase it on an annual basis.
Historically, the town's been very aggressive to try to retire debt as quickly as possible. You know, and we didn't really get that far enough into it. We always played around with different 10, 15s. Our biggest concern is the life of the asset
Mhm.
and not having a bond exist past the life of the asset. You know, a water line, that's a no-brainer, right? That thing's gonna be good for 100 years. So if we borrow for 20, that's fine. But, you know, the technologies, and I'm in the tech business, right? But the technology is changing so fast.
Right.
With all these 5Gs and whatever, one doesn't know. So what I think they were looking at, and Southwick traditionally is very financially conservative and not take a significant risk like that. So that's why they were approaching it in that direction. Further, subject to further discussion. We never got very serious about it.
Right.
It was more about just the overall big nut. And that's why I wanted to, you know, kind of bring this back full circle and take a different run at it. Now that the numbers are different, now that there's a lot more buy-in from other communities, now that there's other financial avenues, and I think we're going to get to that probably next, you know, between starting it up with maybe some ARPA money, maybe starting it up if there's other state grants, either community compact or other to look at to help shove this off the ground. Maybe that kickstarts the whole process down the road, and it gets it to where it just becomes financially a lot safer for everyone to get behind. Because I don't think I don't think you'd have a problem. My personal opinion, and you know, open it to the floor here. I didn't have a personal thought that this wouldn't be successful based on the numbers I saw out of Westfield. And then, you know, you could take the numbers from the hills, from the hill towns. They had a lot of state help coming in and they had no other choice. But even in other communities that have adopted this technology, whether it's yours or anyone else, and even in our southern neighbor here, they're having no problem retiring with that. So,
And you gotta keep into account the plant itself, like the cabling, the fiber, the distribution level equipment, it's all passive. That stuff will stay up in the air 20, 30 years. We've got legacy plant that's over 40 years now. And that stuff is showing signs of weather, yes, but we got 40 years of life out of it. Now the new stuff we're putting up, it's started to get shelf life within the last 5 years. So the endpoints are really where those devices are gonna be subject to the change in equipment and technology, subject to the change in development. So like Tom said, we build a network that's scalable to 10 gig. I don't think any household's ever gonna need 10 gig.
careful with that.
Yeah.
Careful with
Not
that.
necessarily-
Everybody
not
needs
necessarily in our
running water.
If they do, it's probably not a resident. They
Well,
really got a business.
you
looking
just
at
don't
it.
know.
Nobody's gonna need faster than 56K. Don't worry about it.
That dial-up was like
Right, right.
everything at one
Nobody
point.
ever needs more than 640K, right? You know, you never say never, right? And I think just fundamentally, and I think the pandemic proved it more than anything, that this is a utility like electric, like water. You gotta have it, and sewerage, whether it's on site or whatever, you gotta have it. You cannot have
We
You
find
can't
that
market
people
a house-
pay their Whip City Fiber bill before they pay their gas bill or their electric bill, which is, it's kind of,
Well,
when you think about
all
it,
right, well.
you do get a chuckle out of it, but it is that important to people.
It- It's coming up there with, you know, we've had folks come in, residential developers come in and wanted to get Whip City Fiber in their development. And they felt that it would make said house more marketable than an identical house 2 streets over that didn't have. You know, all things being equal, that house is worth more money if it had gigabit fiber versus not. I get it. I completely get it. And even the development on Depot Street that's now approved, one of their marketing things that they were looking at is that it abuts the rail trail and that your fiber's already in it, and they could actually potentially provide the service to those residents, and they felt that that would make the property more marketable to potential buyers.
That's almost a perfect picture of trying us out, is bringing it where we're already.
Well,
We're right there, you know, we're on the bike trail that come right down. And now that we serve the police station, right?
Yeah.
We're-
So for those that drive on Depot, that Scar and Depot Street is them coming into the dispatch in order to connect back to Westfield for our regional dispatch
Dispatch.
endeavor. It goes a little far of our discussion here, but that's what that is. And it kind of spurred the discussion that, crap, this thing was on the rail trail all this time. But they really can't go far off the rail trail. You know, connecting homes all along the rail trail is not the right solution. We need to do the MLP and all that other stuff. Anyway,
So that would be a
Also, one of
possible connection point
That would
when
be,
you start building.
that would be,
From the
yeah,
center of town.
Yeah.
that'd be your most logical
Mhm.
to interconnect.
So you have a fiber hub or a fiber hut, which for most of the hill towns was a precast concrete utility building
Mhm.
that all the wires come into, goes into a server, and everything works out of that. So you have a main line come in, acts almost like a substation on the electric side, and then all the wires come out and spread out. The additional upside that you have being neighbors is similar to what Brian was talking about with the north cluster up in Heathrow, Coleraine, Charlemont, and Leiden, was they're all working together, that you have a main line coming into Leiden, you have another company, Crown Castle, that comes into Heath, and then you have another one that comes into Charlemont, which is Mass Broadband. So it's Mass Broadband into Charlemont and to Leiden. So as those three areas come in, then you have, redundancy, and you can connect the towns together. So we have meet-me points set up, and that was part of our design. So what happens here for Westfield, so one of our hubs is right at Stanley Park. We made it aesthetically pleasing to the park, so it looks exactly like one of their park buildings, right in their cluster of buildings. But similarly here, we can run wire out of there, fiber coming right into Southwick. We can also run it coming down the bike path. We can also run it coming down, Larrow, to the Feeding Hills Road here in Southwick, or the one that comes to 57, the intersection where Pioneer
that's
Dairy
Feeding
is.
Hills Road.
Okay, so, Pontoon.
On two,
So
on your side, yeah.
So then, so we have many routes that we can come in and provide backbone. So if, a car or a storm or something takes out a pole, we can, sectionalize that outage and still feed the remainder of the town coming through. So it's not everything has to be fed directly from a fiber central location here in the center of town. We can also serve it from our infrastructure and basically just, lease space out of that, that fiber hub. So it's
Well, we
very
abut,
convenient.
we abut Westfield for a good chunk of Southwick, right? I mean, so whether it's
Yeah, all the
north
way
on
to
10 and
Sackett to
202,
Reservoir, all the
Right.
way out that way. So
That way, that
really
side,
helps the infrastructure.
on the north end, and that's the rural side, so that might be beneficial.
Right.
The north end on College Highway, and like you mentioned on
Pontoon.
North Long Yard to Pontusic. So, yeah,
So once up and running, when stuff like that happened, you guys would be the ones that would monitor outages and rerouting.
We do everything. So the 800 number or the number that they call.
Yeah.
Will come into our customer service, our tech customer service. We provide 24-hour customer service. Outages of late have been either a car taken out of a pole, a squirrel chewing through a wire. A storm came through, knocked down a tree on primaries, the tree caught on fire, went through the primaries and then caught the fiber on fire. So we respond to all that. You do get into response areas. So response priority goes electric first, and then as it works its way down the pole from primary to secondary for electric, and then down into the telecom area. Typically, we're the next, you would be the next telecom area to go through that. So as everything's getting reattached to the pole, that's when, your data will be back up and running.
but judging by your bill payers in Westfield, you should do Whip City first, then Power.
Yeah, right. That's right.
But a lot of times it doesn't go out. So the wire for fiber is jacketed in like a Kevlar. So a lot of times it holds up the tree or it holds up the pole. So it's coming down. It's put onto a steel strand. So it's wrapped. So then if you need to put multiple strands of fiber on there, you just wrap it. You'll be geeked out looking, oh, okay, I know what he's talking about as you're driving down the street now looking up at.
I've watched it. It's amazing to watch. I mean, they did a great job in Westfield and, the parts that I was able to see it go in. It's been amazing.
How do you handle the areas that are underground utilities?
You would typically put in a conduit system, or if there isn't existing infrastructure, I know some of probably the subdivisions within the last 6 years, the subdivision was required to do Comcast Verizon. Well, Verizon a lot of times didn't come and put plant in. So they may have sacrificed conduit in the ground that is just waiting there for some other utility to come. A lot of times when residentials do conduits to their house, they put in an extra one, just because hindsight's 2020. But a lot of times depends on what the builder did initially, that'll determine what the outcome is for what needs to be put in the ground and dug up. And I know you guys have a lot of underground. I mean, 16 miles is.
It's a requirement for any subdivision in the last 20 years, so maybe even longer now. I've been here, now, yeah, probably 30 years. It's probably been required
Yeah.
that the utilities are underground.
Well, I know when we were talking with the company that's building the greens, or built the greens and building it currently, they already talked to us. They've got spare conduit in the ground waiting for us because they really wanted to see fiber.
They were one of the ones that asked.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm sure,
absolutely.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Close.
I remember meeting with them in 2016 when, they were planning it out.
Well, they were gonna sneak it in. They were just gonna do it cover a night and, figured out how they were gonna get from Westfield to here, right down College Highway.
Yeah.
It's like, okay,
I
boys.
think they would have tried it.
Yeah, they might have, yeah, I know. Hey, give them credit. I mean, they felt that absolutely had a value, right? Just what I was talking about, that was gonna increase the marketability. Lord only knows that they had the hottest commodity in the world during a pandemic, apparently, which is new construction. So they did well anyway, but I think it's still gonna be important. It's still gonna be super important. Okay,
Item 5, that group, I think we've hit on all of that. I told you that the collections, the billing, the onboarding of customers, things like that. We do marketing for you also. We would, hand in hand, if you, gonna have an event and you want Whip City Fiber there because there's gonna be a lot of residents that may have questions and, a get together, things like that. They work out great because one of the hardest things sometimes is for the resident they want it, they just don't know what they might get from it. There's telephone involved, TV, things like that. We'll do events for you and answer questions of residents. We're good at it, but like I said, we probably mentioned the whole town 50 times by now, but we've been through that, before with you. And then the last piece is just helping you become an MLP. You haven't had any votes, and if I could suggest one thing as I'm leaving, it's on your next agenda that would be coming up. Even if you don't move forward for whatever reason down the road, that first vote to get it in this calendar year lets you not wait another 2 years before you can do it. It's just a scheduling thing.
Yep.
Get that first one in the hopper, and then as we're working on this, maybe as we're doing some test areas for you, things like that. The hardest part with introducing it, like Tom said in West Springfield, we're doing 4 neighborhoods as test areas. The people that aren't in those test areas aren't happy because they're asking for it ASAP. And the ones that are in that test area are like, we saw you out there, why don't we have it yet? So it's almost a nightmare for the town people who have to say, it's coming, you gotta wait, it's gotta be built, it doesn't come, it's a process. So set the expectations, I guess I should say. So, do you have any other questions that pop up? I'm sure this is meeting one of many. As I said, getting you the next round of information where you can see numbers and
I think that's
dollars
what.
and things like that.
And again, I suck at running meetings, so I think that from the Board of Selectmen, right, as this, I was the select board designated to run this, and the rest of the committee had brought back a presentation to the Board of Selectmen, said, we need to do this, no gap, and they go, we don't have the money. We don't have $8 million. So I think that this, if we, and when we meet next, and hopefully we'll get more of the rest of the sub to show up and to have this discussion and take this data. But I think what we need is a little bit of assistance with the financial model. Literally just lay it out. You guys have an idea of what the subscriber count would look like. You guys have a very good view of the density and the mileage, and maybe can get a better I'm not asking we're going to commit you to this number, but a number, right? The make ready number, the MLP stuff, that's all on the town, right? I consider that
That's right.
insignificant.
Although, to save you money, I would call Bob Markle over in Hampton. If they just did their second vote, you can
Right.
get all that without having to get too heavy into any legal costs or anything like that. because
Bacon
people
and
have
Wilson
already-
might
No
be,
need to
yeah.
reinvent the wheel. What's that?
Right. I absolutely will, just like we did,
did.
right, exactly, yeah.
And buy him some gas for his electric car.
Yeah,
so it's
right,
all-
but, you know, I think that part, I think the town that was not an issue, right? And we did have the town attorney come and walk us through in an early version of our subcommittee, what's the process? That part we get. It's really to kind of break down the number into something that's digestible, so that when we go to town meeting to put forth a bond issue to do this project, we can defend and uphold the fact that this is not going to fall back on the tax rate, right? The town, I don't want to get in deep shit here, but it's, the town has been cup of coffee to death, right? With different projects that we're going to pay for themselves over time. And it never, ever seems to work out on a lot of them. This one, and here I am, this one's different. But I think it is based on the financial model, because there's actually incoming revenue that you can see, and you can see it being done in other towns, right? So, and I apologize for the profanity before I take.
You gotta understand, you're not the first one going over this barbed wire
Right,
fence. There's some
exactly.
success stories out there
Correct.
that have worked, and it's this exact same model. It's just,
I agree.
it works. And the other thing is that the town gets to set the bill. What you're gonna charge your residents is up to you. So when you see the numbers that we'll give you for the take rates and things like that, it may be a question to the resident saying, you know, if you had to spend X number of dollars to buy this, would you do it?
We actually did that.
And so you get to set that number.
And they say free,
You know,
Well,
right?
They were actually flexible. They don't want it to be super expensive. But,
Right.
Right, compared to Comcast, but they're willing to pay for a good service. You know, they weren't being unrealistic.
Yeah, for West Springfield, I believe the cost that we were using in all our estimations was like $84.99. So basically $85. And they were able to meet their estimated bond requirement with 3,000 customers. Our estimate of the customer take rate there, because of socioeconomic and things like that, was going to be around 7,000 customers. So when you look at that, those additional 4,000 customers that they're bringing X dollars, it's a huge revenue flow and additional net income back to the community. You don't have 13,000 customers, you know?
We don't have 13,000 people, so
Yeah.
we're not gonna hit that number. We're at 9,000. Yeah, right.
We have an estimate
Every
of the
dog
number-
and
yeah, we
cat's
have an
gonna
estimate
want
of your number of
We got
poles.
3685, I believe, dwelling units.
That sounds about right.
So
to me.
about that per home, and we can get that through the assessor's office and things like that, to get, the number of buildings and things like that would actually take, be available for fiber. But going through that, we can certainly, in the next couple of weeks, get all that information back to you as far as the financial side. And also the cost breakdown. We have a great estimating tool based on the number of poles, which is what, 2,300, 2,600.
But as many poles as houses, you're saying?
Yeah. So
That's where the 37.
because the
goes
plant
down.
is so spread out, but you have that, we have an idea of a cost per pole for make ready, estimate. It's around, $1,000 per pole. So that's a significant, amount of your cost. But at the end of the day, once that's, worked on, but you don't have to go out for a bond. You have so many steps to go through before you take the big leap
Right.
for a bond. And the first step is just to go through, hey, here's what Whip City Fiber is breaking down for us, and here's what our anticipated cost is, and here's how we break it down to pay for it. And if it doesn't make sense, then, everybody, shakes hands and walks away. If you then decide to take that next step, it's just a poll application process, and you pay, what's it, $100 per poll, or $150 per poll?
It's about $100 per pole with both utilities. And actually, you lose that revenue, but when you get the numbers back from the utilities, you can then make the actual judgment as to whether or not that's going to be a worthwhile investment. So it's not like you're locked in as soon as you do the poll applications. Yes, you're going to spend that poll application money, for the survey to get you the number that's gonna cost to get on the poles. So it, and then at that point, you know, you can pull the safety net and, you know, jump off the plane.
But hopefully not within that. hopefully with parachute.
What effect has Wood City Fiber had on Comcast service in other towns? Charter in other towns that's been deployed to? Have they kept pace with their maintenance,
Well-
increasing service, or have they like stopped
Well,
upgrading their services?
Comcast themselves has their own marketing scheme. And Westfield's the only real one that we've ever had real impact of Comcast. The other ones, it was only Verizon and HughesNet. But I see marketing all the time at my house where they're throwing deals at me, but it's got that asterisk. And it's got that number at the bottom of when I'm gonna go up to. And they can keep throwing that at me. And I know they throw it at a lot of the customers of Westfield. But once you have the product, once you've gotten used to the service, it sells itself. And I think for a lot of people, it's just, they don't want to go back. You know, once they're locked in with Comcast, it's like, you know, you got a 2-year deal. And you know, at the end of year one, it's gonna hurt. So,
And the quick answer to that is our loss of customers based on unsatisfactory levels from the customer is extremely low. There's not, once they're on, the only ones that are leaving are either moving or, you know, moving within the city or moving out of the city. We haven't had a lot of, we're done with you, we're shutting off. That is very low. So that may answer the Comcast part of it too, is once they come over, they're not going back.
The concern that I have is that if we spend this money to upgrade the system or put a system in place in South Lake, and then Comcast comes in and says, well, we're gonna do the same. And now we are competing against them, whereas right now Comcast doesn't have a fiber offering in South Lake. Right.
They do, but it's for business only, I think, right? Or Verizon, maybe Verizon has a fiber offer.
Yeah, similarly
Probably
for
not.
Westfield, you know, they weren't building out here. Similar, FiOS was Verizon or whatever, you know, hey, we can do it for this price and you can get this, you know, this speed. And you call up Verizon for FiOS and like, you're where? Yeah, no, we're not coming there. The town of Otis had a similar question a year ago when I met with them and he said, well, what if somebody else wants to build out here? We're at risk of that. And I said, you know, 3 months ago had dial-up where you had the squealy fax sound and you think you had to build out here and you think in 5 years, somebody's going to build out here. They're not, you know, they're not going to put that infrastructure out here. They're going to continue competing in the larger cities where, you know, you have that larger population, where you're not competing against municipal. If you go in Eastern Mass, a lot of towns aren't going into municipal broadband because in the same town, you have Verizon FiOS, you have Comcast, and you have Spectrum. And they're, you know, and even, you know, the 5G of the world and all that, that's where they're concentrating on is the large cities. They're not coming, you know, if they go to Springfield, maybe, but they're not coming to West Springfield, they're not coming to Westfield, they're not coming to Southwick, and they're certainly not going to the hill towns because the cost to serve is so high.
Well, I have to imagine eventually Comcast is going to retire their copper.
Fade out.
How long have they had it, right? You go back to the 70s, you know,
Eventually.
the coax has been there and, you know, now, you know, they also in the hill towns, some towns elected to go with them to not take the risk. And they built a hybrid system, they, you know, coming off of fiber with coax going to the house. You can't get that much speed through it. So they're not giving that 1 gigabit to the house. When I became a Whip City Fiber customer, I was a commissioner at the time. I told the guys, I'm like, wait, I want to run the speed test right now. Did speedtest.net, I was 10 up and 11 down, 10 megabits per second up, 10 and 11 down. They hooked it up, same computer, same everything wireless. I was 700 up, 700 down. You know, and it was just like, you know, we have the whole stereotypical big Irish family. And so we have 6 people in our house. We have 28 devices attached to it. I had one issue one time during COVID, called for service and like everything's lagging, not sure what's going on. And that's how I found out we even had 28 devices attached. Everybody had an iPhone, everybody had a computer, every TV, you know, Alexa, all these things were attached, you know, the thermostat, whatever. And he goes, oh, you know, your son has an Xbox. And I'm like, yep. And he said, well, it's plugged into a Cat5 cable and it's running wireless. So they were fighting against each other. And, you know, sure enough, I was ready to throw the thing out the window. But at that point, unplugged everything, you know, just recycled the ONT down to the cellar and the router, you know, did the whole 10-second, plug it back in. Next thing you know, everything's through a fire hose again. So it's just a great service. We wouldn't be here otherwise, because if we're falling on our face, you know, we wouldn't waste your time and we won't want the embarrassment of failure. So.
Just to follow that on though, have you had any reports of in a town where Westfield's a great example. Did Comcast get mega aggressive price wise to be competitive with City Fiber?
They
No,
really
no,
don't.
they didn't.
They just
really
don't.
It's the same marketing plan wherever they are.
In Southwick or Westfield, even though they have it, you have an option in Westfield today.
Yeah, no, they didn't.
They're offering half of our price at times with the offerings that I get.
For a year,
I don't tell him. that.
Yeah.
but for a year,
For a year.
but they're not offering you a,
Yeah, but they'll say, yeah, internet for $35.99 or whatever, but it's, you know, it's that 10, 11. You know, I was at the time when I was the 10 or 11, I was paying for $250,
oh yeah,
you know, and obviously wasn't getting that. It's,
Fair
you know, up to $250.
Right.
Yeah, so,
So
I
you got
did,
all the multiple fees on top of that.
That's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
right. And every
You
year,
don't
you know,
see
the
it.
problem I had every year was going up $10 to $15. January 1st of every year went up $10 to $15 just because. And I said, no, I'm in a fixed price contract for $200 a month. Oh, no, that's not part of it. That's a separate fee.
The
That's
local
separate.
broadcast fee used to be $2.99.
Yeah.
Now it's like $23.
Right.
I also, I know this is kind of awkward for people. I have an antenna in my house. I get 22, 40, you know, Fox, channel 3 out of Connecticut, channel 30 out of Connecticut, PBS, and each one of those has, you know, 2 or 3 substations along with them. And the clarity is better than what you would get directly from
Absolutely.
Comcast. And that's free, other than, you know, paying $100 for the antenna or whatever. But we don't install the antennas anymore. We did when we first started, and it ended up becoming a problem. You know, oh, it's, you know, the tree grew that you know, put the antenna, and now we need to move the antenna. Like, we're we're not in the television business. You know, it's your antenna, you own it, we just put it up for you. But then going forward, the streaming services weren't there at that time
Right.
either. So now you have, you know, YouTube TV or, you know, any of the other ones that stream, that stream the live TV.
Is that what you
And those
find
are
most
great.
of your customers are doing now, is streaming through some of these?
Yeah,
streaming
streaming through a live stream. Some, when I talk to them about the antenna, they're like, oh, never even thought of that. And they go and put an antenna and they love it.
I've done exactly what we got rid of. I have only the internet at my house from Comcast and an antenna in the attic. When we need to watch the local stuff, it's on that. And when you disconnect from Comcast from the TV side, the source for your antenna, keep backfeed all your televisions that you already
Right,
have.
that's what,
done.
yeah, that's what worked out in my house.
Anyway, I did want to share this slide. This was in our survey. So we had 260 responses out of 266 people that graced us with the survey back in 2020.
For the hill towns, that's the $85 a month is the low end of
No,
the average.
That was the
highest
number we
one is
used.
100.
Just- We wanted to guess lowish to write about where we thought it would be. And it didn't say a particular, it just said higher speed. Higher speed fiber optic internet service for less than $85 a month, all in. And what's the number? It's 94%.
You're providing a service, there's no tax on it. There's currently no tax on it, no FCC charge, no anything like that. There is a, VoIP phone option that you also have. There's the typical, FCC and those taxes that go along with that. That's it. For me in my house, I want to say it's $20 to $25 a month for 2 lines. And I used to have work out of my home office, so that's the only reason why we still even have a home phone.
Sure. Some people don't want to let go of those 569 numbers.
Is this gonna be a tiered system, or is this just gonna be 1 gig asynchronous?
our offering is typically 1 gig asymmetrical. So 1 gig up, 1 gig down.
Page 3.
Yeah. Well, there were a couple hill towns that offered a 25, which was the federal minimum mandated number or whatever. I think the take rate for that, and it was a savings of $10 or $20 a month, something like that. The take rate of that was like 1%. It was just that person that only wanted a phone line and they didn't want to deal with the internet and that sort of thing.
So is that like artificial for you guys? I mean, as far as equipment cost and the cost to provide the service at the slower rate?
Oh yeah, that's the same equipment provides a slow rate. And what's great is half the time the customers will sign up for 25 meg. They'll get 25 meg. And a month or two later, maybe half a year later, they're right back there.
They're paying for it because they're
And you just
talking to their
turn it up on the
neighbor.
router or whatever. You don't have to do
That's it.
anything. You don't have to roll a truck for that.
Just it's all through.
So you don't save half the dough on the end device or?
Nope,
No,
same
right.
device.
Same-
It's-
same
it's-
Same
everything.
cost to serve,
Yeah.
same cost
You
to
just put a
serve.
governor
Shrinking
on
the
it, essentially,
firewall. That's all that is.
Gotcha. Awesome.
Oh, so you offer multiple speeds?
Well, they
They can, all it is you're turning the faucet down for that particular customer based on what they're paying for, but it's the same cost to serve.
So how many different billing levels do you have?
We have one in West.
We only have one in Westwood.
Just-
We
oh, one in
we
Westwood.
only recommend one.
Yeah.
We're just saying that there were a couple of hill towns, and they fought for 15 to 20 years to get anything. The passion was extreme and they're still passionate today, even though they're all totally up and running and loving life. But they had to fight for everything they got, but they just wanted to make sure that there was something for everyone.
Mhm.
So for those, handful of customers that wanted that other option to pay something less, they were able to provide that. We also work with the federal government on,
ACP.
it's now the new program is ACP, where they get $30 a month towards access to internet. And then there's also the Lifeline program where they get $9.95 or whatever a month. And that's an opt-in program typically for the network provider or the internet service provider. And we opted in for that for all the communities. I want to say it's where we upwards around 500.
Tops.
So that's like a
people or so
subsidy
there.
that gets paid direct, or gets paid
If
to
you
the
qualify,
provider.
it comes
Right.
paid direct to the.
So your bill is still 90, then you get a coupon or some
That's
other way it gets credited back?
Yeah, it gets credited back on their bill and then it gets paid to the amount.
Correct.
But we manage that on behalf. We do all the application process through the third party and work it through all that.
And one thing we haven't really spent any time, and just being respectful of your time as well here, is what do you do for business? What do you provide? Do you provide the exact same service for business at a different rate, at the same rate? Do you offer higher speeds?
In Westfield, it depends on how many people are in the business, what's the activity of the business. If you're trying to think of, an opportunity like the Summer House wants outdoor Wi-Fi and indoor Wi-Fi and the potential for, 100 people at a time to be taking into that. So it's going to have a bigger sucking sound of the data going to those facilities. Typically for us in Westfield, that's, I think, $159 a month or $150 a month. Your, small law firm or a small, the bike shop here or something like that. What we charge in Westfield is it's like $85 plus $5 for the wireless router. So they're paying $90 a month. Our largest customers were, we have more industrial, but they want, bigger opportunity. I think we charge upwards of $600 a month. And then we also go into dark fiber, where if a customer wants dedicated dark fiber for their entities, where we have a handful of customers that have multiple facilities in Westfield. We also have a bank that does that as well from Westfield to other multiple towns around. We manage that service for them. That's more of an a la carte,
Sure.
a la carte process, but we can work through all of those options.
But say a machine shop,
Yeah, if there's
Once-
5 people working there, it's gonna be,
Same.
for us, it's that
$90 a month.
$90, so it's, $15 more than this, so you put $99 on it.
And it's like symmetrical, you get 1 gig symmetrical.
right, and none of your accounts have a bandwidth cap or whatever today?
We do have something, so if, you have a, I don't know, the server, farm people, that's a little more of a.
I mean, even for
touchy
residential, there's no bandwidth caps or anything like that.
No, but if you have somebody that's doing like, every router is monitorable, if that's the right
Yeah.
word, can be monitored. So we can look at that, if there's a neighborhood, they just like, geez, speed is awful here. We can run analysis and do a graph of every house in that neighborhood to see, is somebody, 24 hours a day, just, sucking data off the line. And then you can have in your service agreement, something that says if you're doing this, or you're over a certain amount of usage per hour, you can ratchet the price difference, and then we can.
I know through Comcast, supposedly through Comcast, I get a terabyte a month. But because we don't have TV, we don't have an antenna or anything, we just stream like 4K TV. I'm probably using about a terabyte and a half a month, but I just haven't heard anything from Comcast yet. But supposedly they're supposed to kick my price up.
Yeah, one of the things that, why West Springfield jumped into this was, kind of just right at the beginning of the pandemic, they came out and said they're gonna ratchet, people for.
Overage, right?
A limited, they think it's unlimited, but they're gonna put a data cap on it, and then, you continue paying over that, similar to a cell phone service.
Right.
Or something like that.
We saw that as well.
We haven't seen any of that, and we monitor, so some of the hill towns have asked, could you give us our top 25 users? And we can analyze that, and you can look at, who's using what and stuff, but we haven't had really any issues with bandwidth hogs. But if you do identify it, again, then that's the town saying, hey, you're using this much. We're only charging you this, but you're using as much as the guy down the street who's paying more, you gotta pay for it. But that's a situation you work out, between the two of us. You're not gonna get limited, but you may identify
If they
somebody
start
that's
to be-
using more.
So what you're saying is if it's impactful to other users.
If you're affecting the network at the end, then there's a reason to look at that, yeah.
Understood.
And the tiers more or less are geared towards what that potential customer could use that you need to have upstream to make sure that they're not impacting your customer. That's the only reason for the
Oh, I
tier.
understand that, right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're providing asymmetrical gigabit and you have 1,000 customers, you don't have 1,000 gigabit of internet bandwidth
Right.
into your system. We get that.
But the way most phones or anything operates, it's a millisecond, it's up, down.
Right.
And
Understood.
you're looking at Instagram, or you're looking at, TikTok or whatever, most of the kids are going through.
I don't even know.
Snapchat.
You're right.
Everything's.
But if the streaming,
Social, everything's
the
quick.
streaming puts that on its head a little bit though, because that is sustained.
It's the same, but it's still low impact. It's even Netflix for the movie draws, it's still low impact. So, and that's why the asymmetrical helps. 'Cause
Sure.
it's down.
Oh, absolutely.
How does the town get billed for the service? Is it per user? Is it total bandwidth that's used?
It would be per user, and the rate structure, I mean, Tom can speak to it, but it's a per user, and we act like we act basically like a wholesaler.
So.
And that's done in, I'm sorry.
For like some communities, they started off with a 1 gig service off of MDI. And then we manage that. And then once that's hitting the ceiling, they'll add another gig or go up to 5 gigs or whatever they need to. So as they were building out, they were taking 1 gig was, $1,400 a month or something like that. 12 for that. And then, double it for 2, but then if you go up to 5, it might've been, 3,600. So as you had to take more data to build your community, but you could step up to get there. You didn't have to start off immediately at, 5. You could, start with a 1. As you reached your cap, then you could add on top of that. Currently for us, we're putting in, 200 or 300 gig switches now that will then also backfeed our whole. So we currently have a loop that comes out of Springfield to Greenfield, all the way through the hill towns, back underneath to like Beckett, and then back down Route 20. So we have in a way our own geographical ring that,
Mm.
that serves all the communities that we're.
You guys have a much better benefit, similar to like the town of Russell. We've been their backhaul provider for about 7 years now. And they just buy that off of us. And that would be the same thing with Southwick. We would provide you the bandwidth, and that would be part of your rate structure. So. It can, from a network
Because
standpoint.
is that just a benefit of geography because we're adjacent?
Exactly,
Yes.
Start you there.
because we are basically a level 2 reseller, essentially.
So West Springfield will have to buy coming in from one area, but they'll take service from the north, from one of our lines coming in and from the, and coming in from the west. So that's where they'll get their redundancy.
Gotcha.
Any additional questions?
Great question.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the questions I want to go back to, you asked about the underground and things like that. Another piece that we do is the dig safes and the engines and things like that to mark the areas and stuff. So that's something else that would be in your package that Twin City Fiber would take care of. So, you know, it's obviously dig safes important, but some people forget about that that's a service.
Yeah.
When we do an underground install, that would be done.
You'll add it to the maps, or it gets added to the overall maps.
That's right.
for Dig Safe.
That's it.
And are you the responder for that when someone calls Dig Safe and they got to come out to mark?
Yes.
Do you guys
We-
come out to
we-
do the mark of your fiber?
Well,
If
in the
it's
hill
underground.
towns, into hill towns, we contract out because of the volume
Fair enough.
and the geography. And USIC is a contractor of many of the other utilities.
Fair
So
enough.
it just lends itself well.
But you're the contact, not the town of Southwick. It's still,
Goes through.
Goes through us, it's managed through us, we're the contact on your behalf.
but if you sub it out, right, I get it.
And then the stipend or whatever the fee that, you know, for the markup fee, they're already getting, you know, they're getting one from Verizon, they're getting one from Eversource, they're getting one from the town, you know, through Whip City Fiber. So they just go out there and if it's $10, $25, whatever, they go out and do their mark, we provide them the information, and that's it. You know, one of the other factors is as we, you know, Brian and Chris talked about the intergovernmental agreement. From there, we manage all the bidding processes from the materials, we manage the bidding processes for contractors and installations, you know, that are going through that. Every one of our installers have gone through, Katrina, she was here, she showed us, that, you know, goes through our charm school. So they've been working with our customers or the Hilltowns customers for the past, you know, 5 or 6 years. So they know the process, they know what's happening. They look for the best opportunity in the home, you know, versus, you know, Comcast before when they went to my house, oh, we're just gonna put this in the cellar. It's like, okay, why wouldn't you put it on the first floor or close to where there's a, you know, activity? So we'll look at that, what the best opportunity is, hiding wire, running wire through the walls, things like that. So all that is taken care of. We come up with what the estimated installation cost is per customer. And with that, you can then set limits. So we have in some of these hill towns, you know, a mile long driveway or a half-mile driveway. And it's like, okay, we'll cover the first, not we, but you'll cover the first 100 feet. And then anything after that, you have to pay for that bit of the installation. And then obviously it costs more if it's underground. But that's all part of the steps as we go and how you want to do that.
Excellent. Questions from here?
Thank you.
Questions on Zoom?
Very thorough.
Great. So I think we are going to call another meeting in short order. We have a couple more things to go over tonight with just the group, but I want to kind of start working on some of that, the financial model, I guess, if you will. And, you know, if we can work together on that and then so that we can bring this back, that model back to the Board of Selectmen, coupled with the existing data that we have, some of the presentation we have, I think this makes this, my opinion, subject to a vote here, that we would have something that we could go back to them and move the process along better than we did last time. We got really close to the top of the hill.
Yep. We'll push you over.
Great.
In the end, it's gonna be an easier decision to make. You're gonna have all the information. You already know the test cases that are out there, so you can see that success.
Correct.
So then if the numbers don't work, the numbers end up not working, you can figure out whether you want to put more money into it or not. But then you can really make a fully educated decision.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thank you very,
We
very
go
much.
back and forth when you schedule one, that we'll get that information over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Week and a half.
Perfect.
And when is the next town meeting?
We just had it in May. They're talking about potentially a special. I don't know that this would be enough to call one, but there might be enough stuff coming around that we will have to call a special. And then next May.
Go from there.
Perfect, but, and I'll talk to Hamden, but I'll also talk to Dan. I think it's Dan. What's the attorney? Was Dan? Keller, I forgot.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll talk to him
I can Find it.
and,
Yeah, pull up
McKelvey.
any of the Hilltown websites. You
Right.
can find a lot of information that's on there that.
Yep.
that they
and we've
have.
had a ton of experience.
Done
I've
there.
been blessed to done a couple of IMAs now with Westfield, so. And we'll wrap this in with the sewer one. We'll see how that all works out. Right? That's coming up. Two
I could be on
utilities,
your
right?
side now.
So, yeah, so Bob Markle and Hamden or Craig Rivers.
Craig
Rivers is the, from the select board.
He's a board chair.
He's extremely energetic on it and has literally done.
He's the U
A
in
doctor.
Camden.
What was his name again?
Craig Rivest, Rivest.
Great, thank you very much. I'll reach out to him.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Hey, thank you so much.
Have a good night.
Um, Do you guys want to, you have already seen it, you were there when we presented it. Would you like me to just send you a copy of the survey and the prezzo? Do you want me to walk through it real quick? And
I
Jason
think
as
just-
well?
Sending a copy would be fine for me.
Jason? We lose Jason? Oh. He's still there.
I'm here.
Do you want to walk through the survey or do you want me to just send it out to everybody again so they have it?
I just send it out.
And also, I will send, I was negligent, I didn't do it. I'll send Marlene sent me a thing about something from Sterling, kind of their experience, what they've done.
Yeah, and Falmouth, Mass is currently also working on becoming a municipal
Yeah.
power and putting in fiber. So a lot of town, and Falmouth surprised me a bit. But Sterling is actually partnering with some of the towns close to them. So I'm not sure how they're doing that.
Some of the smaller communities, like like kind of what G&E did, they just kind of ganged them all together and did them. And, out in the hill towns, where their timing was just a little late with this pandemic, right? But the governor and lieutenant governor had put together this broadband initiative after several administrations had failed to put the money behind initiative to try to get this Hilltown stuff done. And it was really especially for our school district, because it includes Tallinn. They were at a marked disadvantage, the kids from Tallinn. I mean, they were having to drive down to the library at night to kind of glom on the Wi-Fi from the car to get the homework or do this or do that, right? Now that they're gonna have it, and with the pandemic, it really turned everything on its head. They got it done, most of it done near the tail end of the pandemic, but if they had been a little earlier, it would have been done. But, I applaud that. Our problem is here, we're just we're at an awkward, the adolescent stage of this whole thing. We have an incumbent. It's not a great service, but it's more than what the federal government considers acceptable service. So we don't qualify for a lot of the other types of programs that are available. But like I said, with the ARPA, I have studied the Community Compact Grant. I don't know if you're familiar with the program. That was part of Charlie Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito's initiatives when they came in office. They started this Community Compact Cabinet. And if a city or town signed up to it, there was opportunities for grants and funding for different things without a lot of, unlike other government programs that there's money to join, there's no hook. And you're not on the hook for big money down the road. We've done a community compact. We did one for IT infrastructure here in town. We did another one for IT security in town. We did another one for financial modeling. So basically you get a grant, you do what you say you're gonna do in the grant, and you're done. You don't have to sign up and then it's gonna, like the green energy one, right? They offer you money to join the green energy program. That's great. But there's costs to the town over years that far exceed whatever grant you're ever gonna get. It's a noble program, don't get me wrong, but it always has this kind of hook that gets more expensive over time. These community compact grants are definitive and time-based, and when they're done, they're done. Hopefully you learn from it and implemented whatever it is you're gonna do, like the financial model around our budgeting process that we were putting in play. We probably wouldn't have been able to afford to do it had we not gotten a grant, and it's gonna benefit the town, but it doesn't have an ongoing cost. And the IT security thing, I think it's been very successful, knock wood so far, right? And I read the one that they just closed, this year's one about the municipal fiber, and I read it, and that's why I was looking at Mr. Sullivan, it's to wire your buildings together. We already did that. The only one we didn't do was DPW, but police and fire and town hall are already connected to each other. We're on a campus. We just, part of our first IT grant was that. So then they have this specific one. But if they said, hey, well, okay, we can add in DPW and the library and maybe the schools, well, you're blowing by a lot of mileage, road mileage in doing that. And maybe incidentally, by the way, Whip City Fiber can tee off of that to get everybody in those areas as well too, as part of the program. You know, at least you get the infrastructure by there. Worth looking into. I hadn't looked at it that way. I read it as I read it, and they're good at that stuff, right? And Mr. Sullivan's had a long tenure in different positions around.
Agawam was doing something. too.
Yep, I talked to Mayor Sapelli about it. They've done a different road. They had another company come in with a lower tier, slower product, lower cost. And that's what they feel that was going to be the solution for them.
Question.
Under a gig?
Huh?
You're looking at under a gig?
Well under.
Yeah.
Yeah, well under. So worth looking at, but, and it was asymmetrical. So there's an up and a down.
Any idea what their projected payback was?
I didn't see it. I didn't look at it. I get it from, look at what we looked at. We said, we're all in, we're going gigabit fiber to everybody, $8 million. And the selectman said, no.
Yeah, I mean, if that was 1 million, that'd be different, but.
If it was $1 million, well, now with the ARPA money, if it was $1 million, I could probably make the town people could make a very persuasive argument to the Board of Selectmen that that's a no-brainer, because that was where we should shoot the 40, if use Minio Benetti's old language, right, of where we would spend that second tranche of ARPA money, because that would be a long-lasting benefit. But
$100 a pole, that adds up real fast.
yeah, it does. And this subcommittee wanted to kind of put, and that was a ballpark estimate because we didn't actually do a pole survey, because it was double-digit tens of thousands to do the pole survey in the first place. So at some point, you got to start spending money. So we got $15,000 from the first ARPA tranche. We'd have to figure out something else if there's money that needs to be spent to get to a point to hone in the financial model. But I think to take what they told us today is that they're going to be willing to work the financial model that you could then put. They've got a pretty good idea of the polls without an official poll survey, but it's going to be gut shot close, right? Take that, take some of the financial model, take the survey data, take the housing data, take the take rate, take the rate, and you can show the financial model that if you do this, this is how much money, I never will say make, right? But this is how much money you won't lose, right? And then we can go back and have a persuasive argument, because we've seen, I don't know what to equate it to. We spent $600,000 with authorization from town meeting to design a sewer system for Fernwood, Birchwood, right over by the schools there. And then they went to town meeting with the money to bond the money to do the project and was voted down. So we paid, pardon the expression, we flushed $600,000 in fully done design work down the toilet. Because they wouldn't, the townspeople didn't want to spend single-digit millions to do and bond that project, and that would have been on the sewer user. This is going to be an enterprise fund just like that, right? So you're going to have to go and bond. It's a single-digit number, but it's single-digit millions of dollars to do this. You have to have a persuasive argument at town meeting. And, you know, I've seen million-dollar projects go through. North Pond, we bought it, right? That's on the tax rate. That's not an enterprise fund. And before I take, you know, that was, you know, $1 million project. We just did $1 million roof on the fire station, and we're gonna do a $2.5 million project here at Town Hall. But, you know, this is gonna have to be an enterprise fund that's gonna have to be financially independent on its own, that's gonna have to be able to fund itself. I think the G&E's data, even though they're trying to sell us this service, right? I think the data from their own users and from surrounding towns, you know, that they already have, even that have an incumbent. And I use Westfield the most because they already had an incumbent when they did this. Some of the other towns, their take rate's gonna be way higher because there was no other choice. In Westfield, we're gonna be saying, you're gonna go up to you and me and you and you and say, will you leave Comcast to take this service?
Lower price?
Well, but you lose the TV, you lose, you know, and that's a thing, right? Not everybody's so comfortable with, you know, an antenna in your attic or, you know, just Roku's and streaming and all this other stuff, right? There is a thing with
They
that.
still have the option to do a double play that comes into the air. So-
Correct, but I guess it becomes a, you know what I mean? But I just think that that's gonna be, and so much has changed with that and how easy it is to use now and everything else compared to how it was. But if you take a look at Westfield's numbers and then we can put together that financial model, because that's what your select board is really saying. They weren't saying that, no, we don't want to do it. And I was one of the
No, we
select.
don't want to pay for it.
When you were there, right? It's just, we just don't see a way forward on $8 million. That's a big number that you're signing us up for 10 years. And can you tell us that this infrastructure is good for 10? Or
There was
15 or
also a
20?
lot of uncertainty about 5G.
5G. I think
5G,
you're starting to see that actually, right? As far as it's not everything that anyone said it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, we started this, what,
3 years.
almost 3 years ago,
Almost, yeah.
and 5G isn't even close to being here.
And you know, they're going to turn on
Never
screen.
even been on a 5G network yet, so.
And even then, it's going to be a metered thing. It's not going to be unlimited broadband like you have on a wired bill. I don't think it's tenable based on the bandwidth available of what you want to do. And I'm not a super technical guy on that.
Plus
You
5G
are.
5G requires fiber.
So, and that's the one thing, and I did want to get to, because I was negligent, because we had our guests here. I did want everyone to kind of just reintroduce themselves. We'll get to do it again. Hopefully we'll get more people next time. But Bob, why don't you kick us off?
I'm IT manager at OFS Vitel in Sturbridge, and we make multi-mode fiber.
So a good guy to have on this committee, right?
Marlene Quinlan, and I have lived in Southwick for 40 years. And I actually called the town hall before we started this committee saying, when are we gonna get, like, why can't we have Whip City? You know? So my work life, I'm actually work at a cancer center doing social work. But I've been interested in following progress and kind of bringing the town up to speed, so to speak.
Chris Boyd, no relation. I've lived in town for about 26 years, I think. I do drafting and design, currently working the past 4 years for the Dennis Group. Design and build food processing facilities. I've always been interested in high-speed internet technology.
Jason?
Yeah, this is Jason Jaguar. I've lived in Southwick for about 8 years. I do a lot of IT work on the side. I used to own a small website hosting company and streaming service called JWN Media. I probably closed that down about 3 years ago, and now I'm working on getting my photography and drone business off the ground.
Awesome. And I'm Doug Moglen. I'm one of your elected selectmen in town. I'm also the vice president of the OEM business unit at Wally Computer in town. So I'm blessed. I get to live and work here in Southwick, and this has always been an interesting thing for me. I've always, looked at it and thought it would be a good idea. And so when it was initially talked about as far as potentially starting an MLP and looking at having, how this would be, actually, before we even talked about that, but how we would do something like this in town. The select board tapped me as the designee and I asked if we could have a kind of an ad hoc subcommittee, which this is, and to kind of advise the Board of Selectmen on what we think we should do. And it was a really great experience. One, I'm still very proud of the fact that everybody on that committee, short of me, had never served on a town board or committee before. And I think we're pretty much holding to that, though I think we have one town employee and one, not that it's a bad thing, but we have one of the dispatchers, who brings a public safety angle to it. And we have a firefighter medic, who's a call firefighter medic in our, is that the right terminology for her? Paramedic, yeah. Call firefighter paramedic for Southwick, who lives in town, but works out of town, for her day job, on the committee now. But I'm still happy that we've got a great cross-section of people, brought a couple of really unique perspectives to this whole thing. And I think it's, we did great work in the beginning. The first kind of pre-pandemic, the pandemic put a damper on a lot of things. The select board was very, very focused on trying to get us through the pandemic. And then in the last 8-9 months ago, we had a little bit of issues with some appointment type stuff that we got to get straightened out to re-fortify the committee itself in order to proceed. And I know that was frustrating, but we're past that now. And so I think we can move rather rapidly forward on this to again go back, because this is an ad hoc advisory committee of the select board. So we have to go back to the select board and go, what do you want? Here's our recommendation. What are you going to do? And the select board has changed by one member. Maybe this financial model is going to be a difference. We'll have to see. I think everybody, there wasn't anyone, I haven't yet anyone to say this is a horrible idea.
No.
In our entire experience, even from the survey, no one said, this is stupid. What are you doing? Right. And even the Board of Selectmen too didn't say, oh, that was really dumb. It's the financial model of it. If we can put together the financial model that's convincing, I think it'll go. And it's really something, and at the end of the day, it isn't really even what the selectmen think. It's got to go in front of 2 town meetings to start the MLP. That should be a no-brainer, because there's not really a cost. The second is, or the other is, you're going to have to eventually vote a bond issue, and that's a 2/3 vote at town meeting. That's a big hurt.
Now, in order to get this for a meeting in November, you need a special town meeting.
If there wasn't, if we'd have to have a special town meeting,
Yeah, so what qualifies? Oh,
by rule, or no, it's not, by tradition, the select board hates to call it special. Unless there's something urgent that can't wait until then. I don't know that this would qualify to that. So if there were, the North Pond issue caused a special a couple of years ago. There was a time of the essence issue with contracts and language and funding and state grants and everything else. If we didn't act by a certain date, we were going to lose certain amounts of money, and there was contractual things. We called it special, right? So, and we had the special and we did it. And we've had others, but it's been it's costly.
Yeah.
To call a special. It's also imposing, right? You have to warn in all the inhabitants of the town of Southwick, and they all have the right to come and vote. And so that potentially is disrupting 3,000 people's schedule. In actuality, it's probably 40 people's schedule, but you've been to town meeting, right? It was 150 at the annual. So it's just not something they like to do on a whim, and we wouldn't, I don't know that this would be something like, oh yeah, we're gonna call a special in order to do this. But if there were 2 or 3 or 4 items that stacked up, that could potentially, okay, this might be the one to put it over the edge to do it. Say the planning board had something and there was 2 other things that would warrant it. No pun intended. They would pull together a special. I don't think we've had a special in 6, 7, well, we had the North Pond, other than that, 5 or 6 years that I can recall. Oh, and we did call a special for the Allen treatment. Remember, even during a pandemic. We had to bond 800 grand to treat the lakes. And it was timing of the essence. We had to get that stuff into the water by a certain amount of time to make it most official for the season or beneficial for the season. So we called a special and ran. So. Anything else before we adjourn? Should we try to set a meeting for? Or actually, let's not. Let me get back with the Westfield G&E. Let me get the numbers together and we'll call another and rediscuss it again. Hopefully we'll get some more folks to come out. One other point, it is reappointment season. Even though you were just appointed, some of you, to the board.
I did have to scratch my head on that.
Yep, I think I sent you a note. I go, it's crazy, but it's true. So if
Yeah, I got
you want to remain on the sub or on the ad hoc advisory committee, send an email to, I think you probably got an email from me already, to send an email to Robin Solek saying, I'm interested to continue to serve on the ad hoc
I actually got a letter.
in the mail.
Yes, I
I
did.
got a letter in the mail.
I told you, we can't run email, let alone run a broadband internet.
I responded back with an email, but got no response.
Yeah.
It's probably,
Yeah.
as long as it's done, I'm sure, I'll double check what I've got back. Because as the chair of this, I'm supposed to be, I was notified and told her, here's the email for everybody, please send it out.
Now, my husband, James
Yes.
Johnson, who's not here tonight, because he had another meeting in
Yep.
Hartford tonight. But he didn't get a letter, so,
Well, I told,
Yours say Mr. and Mrs. on it?
no,
have him send it anyway, please.
okay.
I purposely sent it,
I
an
didn't-
email
I
with,
didn't
because you have
know
the
if
same,
I had done something wrong.
nope,
and I was
you have the
being
same
singled
email, if I
out.
remember right. If I recall, you have the same email. You have
Yes,
one
I do,
email.
Yeah,
I actually listed you both with the same email address and I put a note at the bottom. I said, yes, that's not a mistake. They share an email.
right.
So I said, do everything twice.
Okay, okay. Well,
I probably should have said it
He
twice.
did not get notified.
Please,
I will-
please take that as not disrespectful. We absolutely would like him to continue.
Okay.
And notice he's on the agenda as, he was reappointed when we did our appointments, because I think this is a one-year it's not a statutory appointment, it's an ad hoc advisory. So we're doing them in one-year terms. So the term will be up June 30th for July 1st appointment. So if you would like to have your appointment continued, just send Robin an
Okay.
email and we'll
All
get it done when the select board does their appointments. This one should be a no-brainer. That's it. Anything else? Jason, anything else?
I want to tell you, I don't know if anybody else is having trouble trying to get in here, but I was having trouble clicking on the link. I had to actually go to zoom.us and type in.
I saw that, but then I saw that Ms. Thornton and Peter, and I didn't see, and John got in. So I did the same thing. I clicked on the link and it didn't work, so I typed in the meeting ID and the passcode and it let me in. So there's something wrong with the link on the website. Not the first time that's happened.
No, but I'm assuming most people know how to use Zoom now.
Well, yeah, we've been doing this for a couple of years now, so these kind of glitches happen and, we work to overcome. So, with that, take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second motion.
And we usually, if it's unanimous, we don't roll call. All in favor?
I
Aye. Any opposition to